Hi Rachie, we're just out in the backyard and I thought I would show you some of our herbs because I'm going to be making some recipes soon that use some of the herbs. So here we go. So down here I have a whole heap of basil and parsley. I'll just get a little bit closer. There's the parsley there. There's all the basil. The parsley I'm going to use in some homemade garlic bread, which I'm going to freeze, and the basil I'm going to make some pesto soon. Over here I have some thyme at the front, T-H-Y-M-E, and some spring onions at the back. This is actually a bit shady. That's why they're not growing so big, I think. It needed a bit more sun, those two ones. Alright, so we'll just move around the rest of the garden and have a look at some other herbs. Here's the rosemary growing. Look at that pretty little rosemary flower. They're so cute. They're probably edible. Oh, look at that. Who's that little fellow? Hello, Benjo. Benjo. Benjo, look up here. So here's my little bay leaf, my little baby bay. Well, it's called a baby bay, so it's a dwarf bay tree. And these bay leaves, obviously you know them, you use them in casseroles. But I just love it. I love the word baby bay. Down here I have a couple of herbs growing. This one here is oregano or oregano, a very important Italian herb. And over here is mint, another great herb. Hi Rach, I'm just making a basil pesto, a recipe for you. Really, you can't go wrong with basil pesto because it doesn't matter if you put a little bit too much of one thing or the other because you can always balance it out to your taste. The most important things is not to put too much oil in, so leave the oil until last and only put about 1/3 to 1/2 of what the recipe tells you to put in, and then just keep processing and checking the consistency of it, and when it's got to the consistency that you like, just stop putting the oil in at that stage. So easy. And I'm going to do the basil pesto recipe, and then I'm going to later on tonight use that for a little dinner, easy dinner for Dad and I, so you can see what it's like. Okay, bye. So here's my ingredients. I've got about 2 cups of basil. I'm going to use 1/2 cup of freshly grated Parmesan and 1/2 cup of toasted pine nuts. You put the pine nuts into a dry fry pan and just remember to stir them a little bit with a spoon, turn them over a little bit. They will toast very, very quickly. And then when you take them off the heat, actually tip the pine nuts out onto a board. Don't leave them in the pan, otherwise they'll keep cooking and they'll get burnt very easily. I always use freshly grated Parmesan, but you could use a packet one if you want to. When I do my basil, I sit the basket of my salad spinner in the sink and gradually wash and pick the leaves off at the same time. And it actually helps because basil leaves they'll stick to your fingers as soon as you try and pick them off the stalk. So if you've got the water running at the same time, it just helps to clean them and wash them off your fingers, so that it just makes it a lot more efficient. And then I put the basket into the container, I put my salad spinner lid on, spin it a few times to dry it out because your basil leaves need to be clean and dry. I've got some nice olive oil and some salt and pepper. I don't use lemon so much. I tend to, if I want to put some lemon on it, I will just slice off a cheek of a lemon and squeeze it over the finished dish that I'm making, because lemon is an acid, and putting an acid in with an oil will emulsify it and make it creamier. And I'm not looking for a creamier texture, I'm looking for a nice sort of oily, bright, vivid, a little bit chunky, fresh basil pesto texture. When you're measuring your cup of basil, you want to have it not firmly packed, but kind of lightly packed down to make the full cup. there, so that's about a cup there. I've sort of pushed it down a bit. I'm just going to process the basil a little bit first and just pulse it. Maybe about 4 times just to get it started, and then I'm going to put the rest of the ingredients in. Okay, sorry for all the noise in the background. Everyone seems to be mowing their lawn at the same time. I've put the Parmesan and the pine nuts, and I've put 5 twists each of salt and pepper from the salt and pepper grinders, and I'll just pulse that up. Okay, so you can see that that's mixed, but it's still pretty chunky in there. So what I'm going to do is put the lid back on and then slowly pour the olive oil in. I'm going to start off with a 1/4 cup of olive oil and just see how I go with that. Okay, I've just scraped down the sides of the processor, and I'm just going to pulse it again 2 or 3 times. I only used really, gosh, I'd say about 3 tablespoons of olive oil. I didn't even use that whole 1/4 cup there. That's the kind of consistency I like. Okay, so this is the consistency of my pesto. Still a little bit lumpy. I've tasted it. I think I'll adjust the amount of pine nuts a little bit lower. So I'll put the final recipe in the description or the first comment on this video. But other than that, it's very tasty. There's plenty of salt and pepper in there. Didn't need more than that. Plenty of basil. It's just lovely. So what I normally do is I roll it into, I've got 2 layers of Glad wrap here. I roll it into a bit of a log, wrap it very firmly and roll it into a log, and then put it in the freezer. And it'll store there for about 3 months, and you can just take it out and chop a little bit off every time you need it for a new recipe. All right, there it is all wrapped up in the log, and I'm going to put that in the freezer. And I'll probably use half of that each time, half of it for different dishes, so it will last for 2 meals. Okay, Rach, so I'm going to cook something with that pesto that we made. It's a galette, Galette, kind of one that I make with puff pastry, and it's a little bit like a pizza kind of thing, but it's very easy to make and very tasty. You couldn't use bought pesto for this recipe because bought pesto has a lot more oil in it. This one has a lot less oil. So let's get going. So these are our ingredients. I've preheated the oven to 210 fan forced. You need a lot of heat for puff pastry. I've got a bottle of wine that I'm going to have with it later, but I've also got some dried oregano, some salami, this is like one of those mixes that's got some mozzarella in it. You could also just get a ball of mozzarella and slice that. I've got some olive oil spray, some puff pastry, and a baking tray with some baking paper on it. So here is the puff pastry. Let me just tell you a couple of things about it before we go on. You've probably used it before. It comes in sheets like this. They do tend to get a little bit stuck together. Oh, that's all right, it's coming off all right. So I'm just taking the backing off, and I'm just going to sit it on this tray here. Now at this stage it's still quite hard, so you've got to wait for it to soften a little bit, because what we're going to do is pull the edges in, and it needs to be soft enough to do that. If I tried to pull them in now, it would just snap because it's too hard. If I leave it to thaw too long, it will become too soft, and if I try and pick it up, it would just melt in my fingers, melt away to nothing. So you've got to wait, I can't remember the time exactly, maybe about 5 or 10 minutes for it just to soften enough to be workable. So we'll just wait for that length of time. I've also got some pesto here that I've just got out of the freezer that I will use. So we'll just wait for this to soften up a little bit, 5 or 10 minutes, and I'll come back. Okay, so this has softened up a bit. Still slightly firm there, so what I'm going to do is to just put the pesto on it. I like to put it fairly thickly on. A nice taste. Now I'm just going to lay down some slices of salami, like this. And just a few little piles of cheese. Whatever cheese, as long as there's mostly mozzarella. So now I'm just going to start to sort of bring this in a little bit and just sort of pinch it and pleat it. So it's sort of, the edges are just sitting over there. There we go. Now I've just got this is just olive oil spray, so I'm just going to spray around the edges, and I've got some oregano here, so I'm just going to put this mostly around the edges as well. Alright, so that's all done, so I'm just going to put this in the oven, which is all preheated now. This is the pesto that we made earlier. I don't think I explained to you how to roll it up. So I had 2 sheets of Glad wrap laying, and I put this on, and I put one end over there and one end over there, and then I started twisting the sides like that. And then if you go like this, it will get nice and tight and make it into a ball, and then you can just tuck that under, and you've got a really nice little shape that's well covered for the freezer. So there it is, Rach. Looks very nice. The underside should be nice and brown as well. Yep. And that took about 17 minutes in the oven. So yeah, looks delicious, and we're going to have that for dinner tonight with our glass of white wine. How's the little galette, Dad?
A little galette.
Well, it's like a pizza.
Oh, the pizza's lovely. Yeah, the pizza's very nice.